to Lead and Lace.
Hi, everybody. It's been a really long time since I've been on a podcast with my husband. He's taken a little siesta from the wife-husband duo and had some really amazing podcasts with some of his friends. And it's been a really interesting 48 hours and last couple of weeks. I'm sure everybody's feeling it right now. It's the weirdest time we've ever lived through. Actually, one of the reasons why I really wanted a podcast tonight was to just document the emotions of the last 48 hours, just because it's been absolutely chaotic and up and down and just so it feels like a circus. It feels like I'm living in a circus right now with regards to...
So just in regards to what we're talking about, so if somebody's listening to this a year from now,
I'm going to elaborate.
2 years from now?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So obviously we're going through this Chinese virus, according to Trump, COVID-19, and it has absolutely crippled my industry. And I shouldn't say crippled my industry, it's crippled my company. Because I've spoken to dozens of friends and they're all working from home just fine and making it through. Granted, everybody is feeling the pain and there's been massive cancellations and, lots of fear, and fear mongering has evolved into loss of sales and loss of business in many cases, not just in the swim manufacturing world, but in the manufacturing world in general, I'm sure right now. In sales, manufacturing sales are probably just taking the biggest hit, and consumer relations like bartenders, restaurants, and whatnot. But with regards to my industry, there's basically, it's a seasonal business because we do swimwear, and there's basically like 3 months to make your entire year's worth of income and overhead.
You know, before we get too far down that, why don't we kind of paint the picture of everything that's happening right now and kind of set the stage as best we can for the listeners. So right now it's March
18th.
It's March 18th, 2020. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this disease in China was announced back in January.
December, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In the manufacturing world, we've been dealing with the forecasting of it occurring sometime in December, and then the massive shutdown of all of our manufacturing plants in Asia, and particularly in Wuhan, in January. And it was right after the Chinese New Year holiday. And so essentially we're shut down for the entire month of January and then some of February. And then because of this virus, we were sitting around having weekly meetings on how we were going to execute in time, and we were going to have order cancellations because we were late. And so
you've been dealing with this for a few months, and
yeah,
I know from my perspective, you've been ringing this bell for a long time, and I've really just okay, sure, whatever. And, you've come home and like, no, Dawn, it's not the same. This is different. This is a big
it's serious,
deal.
Yeah.
And
it's serious for several reasons. When people say it's serious and people shrug and say, well, the flu killed more people, or whatever the talk away might be psychologically to alienate the seriousness of this issue, I keep going back to the psychology of it. Whether you think that the virus is serious or not, that's debatable. The seriousness of the psychology behind it is vital, and the seriousness of what it's doing to our economy and what it's doing to our markets and what it's done to people's livelihoods and potentially ours is serious. And so whether you think the virus itself is serious or not, I think the ramifications of this virus are so serious that I honestly have been thinking about it for 3 months. And wow, if this happened to us, what would it look like? What if this happened to me? What would my job look like? Oh my gosh, if I lose my job, what's that going to look like? I've been thinking about this, and it's been haunting me for 3 months. I think it just started haunting a lot of Americans in the last couple of weeks. So,
well, I think what's been amazing, so, working up to it spreading throughout the world and then it landing in America, and then it spreading quickly across the United States to all 50 states. And then you start getting the government orders at the city level, then at the state level, and now at the federal level of what to do. And social distancing is now, probably the most
mandated.
Talked about term, Yeah,
and I think the best way that Americans deal with crisis is to make fun of them or to like laugh about them. And, I was joining the club until now it's like kind of become a very real for us. The reality is at home as of this week. Monday, I went to work not knowing what was going to happen. We essentially, I had preconceived expectations on how if I were a CEO, because look, I'm, breeding myself to become CEO one day. That's what my goal is. And I literally had in my head what I would say to my company. And a huge problem of mine my whole life has been to level set my expectations. And I always am disappointed because things aren't done the way I would like them to be done or said the way I would like them to be said. And in this circumstance, it was decidedly so. So it was frustrating for me to go into work not knowing what was happening to my company, what was happening to my fellow employees, my team. And in fact, it wasn't until 7 p.m. Monday night that we got an email addressed to us as a company from our CEO. And it was vague and basically just said, you guys can use sick time and vacation time. And if you run out of that, then you are allowed to take it late. You're allowed to stay at home and not get paid, which is such a gracious offer. So obviously that sent shock and fear amongst the entire team. At noon Monday, all of our pattern makers and all of our sewers were sent home when design and the rest of the company was left to be wondering how we were going to execute our jobs without our essential partners there. So that was a major malfunction as well. And then we were also told that we needed to show up Tuesday, even though half the company was sent home. We were still meant to show up Tuesday in order to get paid. So there's a ton of like discriminatory things that happened in the last 72 hours that just don't sit right with me. And then on top of that, it was just a lot of inaction and, laissez-faire action. I found myself researching on my own, sending HR information on unemployment insurance, which then got forwarded thereafter. I sent them information at 2:30 p.m. from the city of Orange County saying that the entire city is being mandated in a lockdown, quarantine.
I think one of the craziest things for me is just how quickly it happened.
Oh, it was it was mayhem.
So it went from,
it's a slight cough. It's a slight flu too.
Well, I mean, not even the virus aside, your company went from being $100 million company, $100+ million company, to basically, we're shutting down.
Well,
and whether or not
for context,
they actually shut down.
When I started working there
but
2 years ago, when I started working there, it was a $200 million company.
Okay, I mean, regardless, even if you're a $50 million company, to just all of a sudden in one day, from what it seems like to everybody who works there, I mean, every single person who works there, except for maybe the top 3, to just say, sorry, bocce player, you're all out of a job.
Yeah, that's essentially
just, I mean, I can understand if you work in an already in an industry that is full of ups and downs and constant layoffs and all of that stuff, but to just all overnight go, yeah, sorry, we don't need you anymore. Good luck.
With no support or no follow up from HR whatsoever as to like actions to take to supplement our income, but
no warning, no nothing.
Well, yeah. So I forwarded them the warning from Orange County, basically mandating we shut down. And then about 15 minutes later, there was an email that came through from the CEO with both of the articles in which I presented to them attached to the email. And at that point, our option from them presented to us was to file for unemployment insurance. And it was clearly stated that only essential employees are able to work from home.
And if you were an essential employee, you were notified.
You were notified separately that you were an essential employee. Well, I wasn't notified. I was told, offhandedly.
Well, you were, but you weren't.
I was told like, hey, what do you have that's essential that needs to get done over the next, 2 weeks if we close down for 2 weeks? And I sent a laundry list of items and they didn't deem it essential, in my opinion, because they didn't notify me to work from home. And then as I'm walking out the door Tuesday, I was told, you need to work tomorrow. So right now I'm literally playing it day by day as to whether I'm working or not. I have probably enough vacation and sick leave to get me through whatever this mandated closure might be. But yeah, it's very scary. And,
And then after that, you have no more vacation. You have no more sick days.
And no income
for the rest of the day. And it's not like this virus just up and disappears in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you do get sick, if if we do want to take a family vacation or whatever, sorry.
Yeah.
For the rest of the year.
Yeah. So obviously, like, I'm watching everything I spend right now because indefinitely I'm not sure what my future looks like career-wise. So obviously I hit the books and, I'm trying to like make a backup plan. And I'm really candid with my leadership team and said, hey, you've left me with no other option.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, whenever a crisis hits, that's where the leaders really shine or separate from the pack. Oh,
yeah. I've said that so many times over the last 48 hours.
And one of the things that your cousin's husband posted online really, I thought was pretty interesting, Franco. Mm-hmm. His real name's Tony, but we call him Franco.
Shout out to Tony.
He said, pay very close attention to how businesses are treating their employees because this is showing of their true and core ethics. And I really thought that was interesting and could not be a truer statement because of, when shit hits the fan, that's when everybody's looking to their leader to say what to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that is so essentially true for me right now.
And when you got radio silence, it's like they left you on the burning ship up in space, and they are in the ejection pod saying, don't worry, it'll be okay.
They have not addressed the company at all today. So, yeah, it's been radio silent all day. We had some pretty tough meetings to finish up the day. Essentially, businesses are crumbling everywhere. Websites are being shut down, which makes zero sense because digitally native landscapes are pretty much the only thing that can keep running, but to each their own. I think, every business has a different responsibility of keeping everybody safe and healthy. And I understand the complexity of debating if you should keep something open and risk other people's health and safety. And so obviously there's just a lot of, like I said, complexities that are involved in, narrowing down what the right decision is. And there isn't a good decision. Like, you either put employees out of work to save them from getting sick or spreading the illness to their family, because they could just be a transmitter of the disease or the virus rather. It feels like a disease, not a virus for some reason to me, but and maybe because it's just diseased every part of my life in the last 48 hours. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just been a very complex time. And I was telling my dad this morning, like, it's not like you can just like call your dad or your grandfather and say, hey, what did you do when this happened during the Great Depression or during World War II or during Vietnam or during the Cold War? Because this is literally something that none of us have ever lived through.
Well, it's not just that. So on that same vein, it's not like you can just jump to another company.
Yeah, that's
the biggest kind of oh shit moment that hit me when you were talking about the potential of losing your job, where in the past, if you've ever said that to me, I'm like, it's fine. You're such a hard worker. You'll land somewhere else.
Yeah.
You will never have a hard time finding a job in this world. I never really calculated the fact that 0 companies would be hiring.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been interviewing, and I've had a lot of situations where I've been kind of like building a backup plan for myself over the last couple of months, just due to the nature of the businesses that I work on, and the instability of what I've been doing has kind of rattled me a little bit over the last couple of months. I'm not an idiot. I can see around corners pretty easily, and the writing was on the wall about 10 months ago for me to kind of like find an exit strategy. And I've been working on that actively. I had a really good friend of mine say to me, "Hey, Holly, you're way too talented. Don't let this place shut down and you be the last fool, on the ship, like Titanic style, And I laughed and said, yeah, I hear you. And then I called her last night, and she was kind of my like trump card. And I called her last night because she's at a very successful company. And I was like, hey, I'm on the Titanic. Like, I got the violin in hand. Throw me a rope. And, we had some really good conversations today. And I think yesterday I was in a pretty dark place. I've been in a pretty dark place for a couple of months now. And a lot of it's been due to my work schedule, and my work-life balance has been horrible. And it's due to the fact that I've been stressed about losing my job. So I'm not putting in all this effort because I'm comfortable in my position. I'm putting in 100 times more of the effort because I have been laid off in my life, and I know what it feels like to not have a job and be nervous about how I'm going to make a paycheck. And that was when I was 21 and I didn't have a family to feed. And, the responsibilities economically are cumbersome and overwhelming at times. And we've had a lot of really, really good conversations. And you've been such an amazing partner to me in all of this. And you've put up with a lot. And, sometimes when you're depressed or you're in a dark place, like you're in it all on your own. It's a very selfish place to be because you're thinking all about yourself and how miserable you are. And so sometimes it jeopardizes others around you. So I really appreciate you helping me through some of this.
Well, of course,
but
baby.
it's not getting easier. It's getting worse. But I mean, you've definitely been a shining light.
Well, ultimately this is the reason for partnership. And this is why you sign that dotted line and you say those vows is, it's for the good times, but it's also for these times. Yeah. Without like what's having a partner if you can't go through these times with them.
Yeah. I think for me, I always like hear the echo of you saying like, oh, I just love this house. I just love living here. I just love everything that we've worked so hard for. And we have a lot of celebratory moments in our home and as a family, and we work our asses off. And I've worked my ass off for as long as I can remember, and earning sizable living to achieve things like owning a home and building a beautiful backyard and landscaping and remodeling and all that stuff. It's achievements. It's kind of like, yeah, I got my yellow stripe today, and taekwondo and or jiu-jitsu or whatever. And yeah, so for me, it's always kind of like another achievement on my belt. And then I'm reminded, by friends, family, and life that it's not about what you have, and it's not about what you've acquired. And the acquisitions go away really quickly, and they can all be stripped from you and very quickly. And then you just have to kind of hunker down and go, okay, what is it that I'm really, really passionately tied to? And what can I dispose of? And when you start making that list of disposables, sometimes people are on it. And sometimes jobs are on it. And, so for me, more than anything, like you said, like being shown very clearly, if it wasn't clear before, it's crystal now. Where I stand at my company and how they value me as an asset or, a tool. I've been told by my direct leadership, like, oh no, you're it, Holly. Like you do not worry about your job. You're you're our top performer. But at the end of the day, there's several top performers, and there's only so much work to spread around. And when my work has all been depleted due to circumstantial
things outside of your control.
Yeah, so essentially I don't have any contracts tied to what I work on. My business is very fluid. And it comes and it goes. And there's competition that can come and sweep it out at any minute. And there's circumstances like it's not selling, or
they shut all their
they
stores
shut
down.
their stores down today. They shut websites down. So there's just a lot of circumstantial things that wiped out pretty much my entire $20 million business overnight. Well, it's more than that. I would say roughly with the business I'm speaking to, I think it was roughly around $30 to $40 million overnight. I probably have like about $500,000 left overnight. So
that's jaw dropping.
It is. And when you just kind of like look at the big picture, I understand, there's a lot of pressure on the CEO's head right now on making essential cuts and making,
Yeah, but that's why you get paid those big dollars. People can say, I feel bad for those, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah, heavy is, yeah, for sure.
I understand.
They don't say qualified is the head that wears the crown.
Well, I mean, how could you really say that you're qualified for a lot of these positions and a lot of these jobs and you don't know? And we say it in the military, like somebody will grow into that. Somebody will understand that. You can't possibly promote the guy into the job who's already ready for the job because he should be taking that next job.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But when you put people in those elevated jobs, they need to grow into them. And if they don't, they need to get the fuck out of them.
Yeah.
And
I drank the Kool-Aid in the beginning.
I guess the big thing that's been so frustrating for me over the past few months is watching how hard you work. And we've talked about this several times, that your work ethic is so insane and so intense. And to see you, get up at 6:30 in the morning, go to work all day, come home at, 7, 8 o'clock at night when nobody else is. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing for day after day, month after month. And you're like, oh, we're just in a busy time. Oh, we're just in a crunch. And I'm like, well, this whole thing is spiraling out of control, and now this has become your routine.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid I'm never going to get that 9 to 5 back from you.
For sure. I mean, look, I have that same feeling. Yeah.
Well, it's selfish for me in the sense that, like, I just want you to be home, and I want to be able to go, have dinner with you at 6 o'clock and not 8 o'clock, whatever the case is. But when the shit hit the fan and you get radio silence from your CEO, and when she knows the whole world is burning down and you get radio silence, and then when you do get a little peak or a little, like, okay, you see the name come across, your CEO's name come across your mailbox, and you're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
We're going to get some relief. We're going to get a breath of fresh air. And it's like, hey, basically, I got nothing for you.
Go on the state website and file for unemployment insurance.
And file for unemployment. And that is just jaw-dropping, because even the worst leader that I've ever served under in the military, I don't believe is that callous.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. Either someone's speaking for her and she's just typing what she's being told right now, that person, or she's just failed miserably as a leader, because in researching all day to day, there's just so many things wrong with how it was handled. But outside of that...
Well, no matter what, you can't have that second option. Like, she has failed terrible as a leader no matter what. Even if she is a puppet.
Yeah.
Even if she is just regurgitating what somebody else is feeding her. The fact that it's put upon you to deliver the news that people have no jobs anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it was disseminated from the CEO to the management team, and we were left to disseminate it to our teams. I mean, you don't have the right to hire and fire without talking to anybody else, right? Inside of
what your job duties and responsibilities are. You don't have the right to dictate salaries when you're hiring. You need other permission and approval for that.
Yeah, but yet I'm left to be autonomous when it comes time to handling crises.
Yeah. I just think it is it's just one of the biggest displays of really terrible, shitty leadership that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, she's had some pretty awesome things said about her upon departure, and in one circumstance, one of the old HR gals before she quit just railed her in a public email sent to the entire company on her way out. And they weren't able to retract it because a lot of people had already opened it. And that was like week 4 for me. And I remember thinking, wow, this is like indicative of the type of leadership that's running this place. And back to what you were saying before about like never getting that 9 to 5, work schedule, work-life balance back. I don't even think it really dawned on me until I actually went to a job interview. And I was like explaining myself. And I was like, oh, and I do this. And then I manage a team of 4 designers. And then coincidentally, we have pattern makers that sit there, and I manage this brand and this brand and this brand and this brand and this brand. And I was like, and it took me like 45 minutes to tell her what I do. And she was like, how do you manage all of that? And I was like, I'm exhausted. I just told her that. I was like, I'm literally exhausted. I'm up till midnight answering emails. I get up at 6 and I answer emails because I'm working with Asia. I'm working with Colombia. I'm working with New York time. So yeah, I'm exhausted. And she was like, there's absolutely no way that you could physically perform that and still have time for your family or still have time for yourself. I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. I don't like it. And it was this like random stranger on a job interview telling me this. I was like, I feel like I'm in a therapy session or something, but like, it was like an epiphany for me when you say it out loud. Cause you just do, I'm a doer. So I just do, and I do, and I do. And then when you actually like state it into being, you're like, whoa. Yeah.
Well, I think the reason why it's not so bad for us to handle at home, because I do that same thing.
Yeah.
I'm just fortunate enough to be deployed to a really shitty country.
Yeah.
And not have to worry about coming home, where it's okay to work 20 hours.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to deal with the other stresses of life. You don't have to worry about transit to work. You don't have to worry about eating or where you're going to sleep or your kids or anything. And you just simply wake up, you walk 20 feet to your workstation, you work 20 hours, and then maybe you sleep there. Maybe you walk the other 20 feet back to your bed.
Yeah.
And repeat it for 6 months. So then you get home and you get a massive break.
Yeah.
In the sense of, if you're not jumping right into programmatics and contracting and, dealing with all of that stuff, it's kind of, in the military, you get this massive break because you just did that for 6 months. So they say, okay, come back, chill for a little bit so you don't go off and like just murder somebody. And then, we'll redo this again in 18 months.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But what I found you slipping into, and one of the things that I could identify because of how closely related it is to the way that we work, was that you were falling into that trap. And
sure.
You were never going to get that 9 to 5 back, and you were never going to get control of it again. And just how, it was causing fights at home, and you never...
I was miserable.
Even when you came home, you were like, I am so tired. I just need to sit on the couch and look at my phone and unplug from reality.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey mommy, hey mommy, hey
Yeah.
mommy, hey baby, hey baby, hey mommy, hey baby, hey mommy, hey baby.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm just going to go to sleep.
I felt like those superheroes that get like super frustrated in movies, and they get so frustrated the whole world explodes around them. Like my frustration was starting to kind of like emanate in all aspects of my life. And I really genuinely think that this is like a really nice pause for me. Obviously it's a horrible thing that happened, but you said it today, and I've been thinking it as well psychologically, like in my own personal space in my brain, that, sometimes it takes a really big scare or movement to kind of push you out the door into doing what you really want to do. And, my subconscious, I often refer to as like God speaking to me. And I have to say like subconsciously, whether it's God speaking to me or if you don't believe in God, it's your subconscious. But my subconscious recently was kind of telling me like, okay, you need to be a subcontractor. You need to go do this. You know, this is what you need to do. This is what the next step is in your life. You need to do this. And I'm like, that's a really cool thought, but I don't even know where to start, you know? And so sometimes these like giant leaps of crisis are just pauses for me to kind of reevaluate and say, okay, this is my next step in my life. And whatever that in-between stage might look like, whether it means I'm still good and I'm still employed and I can cruise off into my next adventure in life, or it means cut the cord. We struggle for a little bit and look into alternative,
sure, and who knows, maybe
situations.
Maybe your CEO gets fired and a new person comes in and completely revives and revamps your company, and everything goes back to, or not back to, but everything kind of normalizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, a normalcy. I mean, it's shocking when I talk to friends. They're like, "How you guys have some of the healthiest brands in the industry? We have 1, 2, and 3 top selling brands in the industry. Like, how is it that you are functioning this low?" And you can only attribute it to one thing. You can't say like, oh, well, it's because you had bad designs or you had bad manufacturing or you had we had bad leadership, you know, and bad decision making at the top, and not having foresight to see that these big manufacturers that are dying are not getting healthier. They're dying. And, you know, in a state of crisis like this, instead of researching all of the, you know, culpable options, you just throw out a fucking dart and hope it sticks in the wall. And, you know, the whole company is just left there going, that's what you pulled out? Like, that's what you're telling us? I think more importantly, it's good to recognize that, you know, there's people who are in worse situations than we are. And for me, like listening to some of my coworkers, I'm sitting here tripping and my coworkers are like, yeah, my husband's a bartender and I'm the sole provider. And now we're both out of work and we have 2 kids and we have a mortgage. And, you know, so there's so many situations that are much worse. And so I came home from work that day. I went and checked on the elderly neighbors across the street and down the street, hung out with my kids, hung out with my husband, emailed people, researched a lot, and we're moving on. Another day, another dollar. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, this will pass and we'll get through this and we'll be 100 times stronger and we'll have lived through something that nobody we know has ever lived through.
Or we won't. And we'll be in a fort in the woods.
Yeah. I mean,
with our best friends and some guns.
I've measured a lot of what ifs, and you were laughing about it today too. There's just so many what ifs right now, and in the healthiest way possible, measuring the what ifs for me in my lifetime. I've always thought of things, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, but I've always thought of like, what's the worst that could happen? Because if I prep myself mentally for that, everything else is fine. I'm totally chill. I always did that snowboarding. Let's go down the biggest hill first. Now everything else is a breeze. Hit the biggest jump first, then everything else is a breeze. Hit the hardest rail first, then everything else is a breeze. So I've kind of always established that mentality in my life, like go big or go home, you know? And in this scenario, I think I've been kind of always like, hey, and I'm not trying to be negative or put it out there, and it can be often confused for negativity, but I'm always just like prepping. I'm like a doomsday prepper in my mind. And you have been such a positive light, like, Holly, come on, chill out. And we've gotten in a lot of arguments, as I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can relate to. I've heard a lot of my friends say the same thing, where they've argued nonstop with their husbands in the last couple of months, or, you know, spouse, husband or wife or partner. And it's because not everybody thinks the same about this. And, you know, doomsday preppers think differently than optimists, and, you know, eternal optimists think differently than realists or pessimists or whatever you want to call us or label us. We all think differently.
Well, I think it's really funny that you label me as an optimist, because I think that a lot of people that I work with would call me the other way, the opposite. But it's
What would they call you? They would call you a pessimist?
I don't know if maybe a pessimist, but maybe, I don't know, an asshole. But
you're definitely an idealist.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to figure out how.
Yeah, the why.
I have a challenge. We're going to get it done. Mm-hmm. We're going to do it. Okay. We have to make some sacrifices. We have to make some moves. Fine. We'll get through it.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario is that we all just die.
Yeah.
And
I thought of that today. I thought, well, what happens if all of us adults die and my kids are left here by themselves in this home? Like, I've thought that.
That would legit be the worst case scenario. But
yeah.
We have family close. We can make a last ditch effort call. I mean, to my
Maddie,
dad or whoever,
yeah.
grandma, and
Maddie and Andrew comes.
Yeah. John Chad will come across the country and come scoop them up. But at the end of the day, I just don't see. I don't find it valuable, and I don't think it helps to sit and dwell on the negative.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't respect it, and it's not that I don't understand it, and I don't weigh it.
Or empathize with it, yeah.
I just don't find value in sitting on it.
Well, so for me, it was more just like preparing myself, preparing our family, preparing the what ifs, strategizing, because you're good at strategizing, but you tend to do it when the event occurs rather than like premeditative strategizing. And when I was like, what if I lose my job, or what, and then when it became like a real thing, like, hey, this actually might happen. I might actually be unemployed in a couple of weeks. Then you're great at strategizing. But for me, I'm like, I want to know like what the next couple of weeks are going to look like for our family. How we're going to eat? Where are the groceries coming from? Like,
sure. But I think that we have set ourselves up to where we have bought ourselves a guardrail against the decision.
Yeah.
So the decision that we need to make isn't something that needs to be made tonight. You know? And we can afford to wait the 2 weeks and see what the future holds and let another course of action play out. And
I just want to go back to that moment when we were at the toy store and we had been kind of arguing a lot that week just based on what's happening in the world and the value of it and the weight of it and whether it's important or not important. And we went to go get me a computer because the idea of me having to work from home was becoming a very real thing. And there's no one in the stores. There's no one in the toy store. We go and buy toys from Eric, and Don leaves the store to go take a call from his friend and boss. And he comes back and he's like, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm like, well, for what? He's like, for not taking it as seriously as I thought, or as you wanted me to. I mean, I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to empathize that this is getting kind of real. And when your friends start kind of like sharing their stories, or potentially having family members getting this virus, I keep wanting to call it disease. It all of a sudden is like, okay, yeah, because I mean, I literally don't know anyone who has it,
Sure.
And then when you start hearing like, oh, this person might have it, and this person's child might have it, and this is a reality. Like, pretty soon there's going to be someone we know and love that has it, and that's just something else we have to cope with. And not being able to see them while they're in the hospital, and not being able to visit them, those are things we're going to have to cope with. And just kind of like realizing there's more to this. We might actually be on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. So I think really and going back to what I was saying earlier and how quickly it all happened, it was never, I still don't truly think that I respect the disease or the virus. To me, I still do not think that it is something that should be feared. But what I didn't fully calculate was how batshit crazy the entire nation was going to go and what that was going to look like.
Yeah.
And when my buddy asked me, like, hey, did you go buy more guns? I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, what?
what is life right now?
What am I missing?
Yeah.
What am I missing? And to just watch every block, every store, every business shut down, and people are staying home, people aren't doing things. And
it's crippled this nation.
The next step is looting. And I really didn't calculate that because I just didn't, again, I didn't fully respect the disease, and I still kind of don't.
Virus, yeah.
And so, yeah, that part just didn't make sense to me. And then when he asked me that, I'm like, well, you're not really a freak out guy, and you're starting to do that. So
I know. I think that's
so
like
maybe I should.
The boy who cried wolf, right? Like I freak out a lot, so you pacify when I'm at a level 10, and I'm like, no, I'm like this time, like this is serious. You're like, yeah. But like when a level 0 person operates at a level 10, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even at a level 10. It was just like, hey, dude, have you even given these thoughts? Because you should be. And, I will say that I'm sure a lot of what I was pacifying for what you were saying was getting caught up in our arguments, and then me wanting to, be right about this and you want to be right about that. And then those conversations were intermingling, and I just didn't give enough weight. And to be honest, I still have a hard time understanding what the hell is happening, because it just doesn't make sense to me that this is the apocalypse.
I know, it's very biblical right now. I also to that point, the mind is Satan's playground. I've always heard that in church and read it in the Bible and believe it to be true. Like there's so many things Satan can do, but he can't do it unless he's in your head. And he can't do it unless he has a brain to work with. And when you allow those thoughts to kind of rule you and take over and, control your thoughts and your being, that's when really, really dark times come up. And I think we've allowed, and you keep saying it, like the media should be completely burned to a stake for the way they've perpetuated this.
I absolutely think the media, what they're doing right now, is absolute garbage. So I wrote a paper in college about the CNN effect, and what the CNN effect and what I was writing my paper about was the change in warfare, and how, up until Vietnam, the country supported the wars and they supported the troops, and there was never any real issue with how we were doing things.
Yeah, there was never negative propaganda being thrown.
And the way that we fought World War II and World War I, had that been broadcasted the same way that Vietnam was, it would be
Bloodhouse.
It would just be insane. And so basically the CNN effect is how the media can take hold of a situation and manipulate the population and people and decision makers into feeling a certain way and taking action against a topic or an agenda, whatever, for the sake of shutting the media down or just saying that they're answering the media's call. Because the media has this platform in which they can just say, oh my God, look over here, look over here, look over here, look over here. And then everybody's like, yeah, what's over there? Wait, hey, why aren't the politicians looking over there? Why isn't the president looking over there? And they're like, because they all know that there's nothing over there.
Yeah.
Or that it's not a big deal, or we have bigger things to worry about. It just doesn't meet the threshold for them to worry about it. But because the media is saying, can you believe the government isn't doing this? Can you believe that nobody's looking over here? All these threats and all this slander against the decision makers, and then the population goes, yeah, that's right. I can't believe it. It's insane. And so what I think is happening right now with this coronavirus, I get that it may be important to isolate and to social distance, and I just don't think I don't think the bang for the buck of shutting down the entire economy, ruining lives, what we're doing right now is not going to be recoverable in the next decade. Not at all.
I agree.
No way.
I agree. We're going to feel this for years to come.
Call me callous, but I feel like there has to be an acceptable level of death or exposure that the country needs to take on so that it can survive. Because, and I want to be really careful about how I say this, but...
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
What we're giving everybody else is a roadmap for how to defeat America.
I know. Yeah.
Because, they used to think, we have to worry about people storming the beaches or people hacking our internet or, people screwing with our elections. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? This is...
biowarfare, yeah.
This is 10 times the Russians screwing with our elections.
This is nothing on...
They shut our freaking economy down.
Yeah.
They are losing, job rates, unemployment rates are going to skyrocket up into the 20%.
And they're killing people in the process.
Yeah. And so,
yeah.
But now how hard would it be to do anything that you want to do? If you want to take over a business, if you want to hack into a business, if you want to hack into the government, they're not there. They're not there to defend it. They're not even there to see it. So they put their, do whatever they're going to do. And by the time you show up 2 months later, it's already in there and there's no defense. By the time that there's any response to anything, it'll be too late.
Is this in Russia? I haven't heard a word about it being in Russia.
Because the media doesn't have a place to stand in Russia.
But ironically, if it's everywhere, if it wasn't in the country that planted it, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you follow what I'm putting down?
I understand what you're saying, but that's a stark difference between the media having a foothold and being allowed to say whatever they want to say whenever they want to say it. And I'm not saying censorship.
But it'd be
censorship is the way to go. That's not what I'm saying.
That would be a perfect story for them. Oh, hey, this is everywhere but Russia.
But that's the thing is like it's not, right? So they border China. I don't know if they necessarily border. There's Mongolia right there. So regardless, to say it's not in Russia is ridiculous, right? But the way that they're probably looking at it is that a bunch of people got the flu.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what the media in Russia is not going to do, especially when they just gave Vladimir Putin the right to be the president there until 2037 or give or take a few years. I'm not quite sure on the article that I read, but they extended his ability to be the president for a long time. And so do you think the media is going to get on there and say Vladimir Putin is screwing us? No, because he'll just kill them or put them in jail. And so I want it to be clear that I'm not going for censorship. I'm not saying that we should shut our media down. But what I am saying is that the media should be held accountable the same as if somebody stood up in a public place and yelled fire when there isn't a fire and causing hysteria and what that'll mean for that individual. What they're doing is they're standing up to the nation and they're yelling fire and people are reacting.
Yeah.
Irrationally.
Yeah. I think that in general, it's just been complete mayhem and it's on all fronts. It's not just my company. It's the city of Orange County is reacting and then retracting and it's just mayhem. But the good news out of the bad news is, like I said, this is going to pass. I agree that we're not going to be able to. People are saying, "Oh, it's just going to be a V and go down, and then it'll come right back up." I'm like, you don't have to drink the Kool-Aid to know that ain't true. Like, there's just no way. So,
what do you mean?
Like, there's no way the economy is going to rebound quickly after this. It's going to take years and maybe decades. To your point, like, I don't think maybe even in our decade, next 2020. By 2030, we'll still feel this. And
yeah, if you look at, the swine flu, SARS, West Nile, those were all, I don't know about equally devastating, but they were all terrible. And they affected a lot of people. And they they were pandemics. Mm-hmm. The difference is that we didn't react to them the same way that we're reacting to them now. And I may be completely uneducated in what I'm.
No, I think you're right. Based on the statistics, I think you're right.
I may be uneducated in the way that I'm reacting to it. Maybe it is worse.
I think the difference is the contagion level. Apparently, it's far more contagious than we previously thought. Apparently, it's not, prone to senior citizens, and it's not a, it's a very democratic virus. Like, it'll go after anybody, and it's not choosing who it's going to be, a contagion to. And I think those former thoughts put in place by China, or from the stats given to us by China, and everything you do in life is predicated by knowledge and research and science and studies that have been put in place, and years of research are spent on them. And there's just none of that exists with regards to this. We have very minimal information. It's changing daily. We're getting information from Europe now that seems to be a little bit more accurate than the information we got from China.
Sure.
But I think there's certain things that are worrying me right now that shifted away from the virus and shift away from my career and are more concerning with regards to like where we stand as a world and with regards to war. We keep using the word war in the media right now. They're like, this is a war. This is a war. This is a war. And Trump passed that wartime law that hasn't been enacted since the Cold War, where private companies are having to potentially produce and create products so that, we're fully supplemented in this nation. And just
the Production Defense Act.
Yeah, the Production Defense Act, which is genius. But it's also scary. I mean, every time something new comes out of the White House, you're like, great, I totally support that. But it's also scary that we're doing this. Like, it's the last quiver. You know what I mean? Like, is this the last arrow we have? And then there's another arrow.
I don't
that's
think so.
Pulled
I think it is good that he pulled that out, because what it's going to do is incentivize some businesses to stay open during this whole deal, and it's going to also supplement, it's going to stimulate parts of the economy so that people can still work throughout this thing. And I think that's very important to do.
I think so too. I don't know. It changes so quickly. And it's really hard to just kind of like sit back and relax, because it's like, oh,
yeah.
Now this just got passed, and this bill, and I think once everything just gets passed, and I think by next week we'll be able to kind of like move forward and see, where we stand as a nation, as a company, as an employee, as a mom and dad of 2 or 3 or however many children you might have. Like, I think once we get some answers and some actions put in place, apparently there's a cure that they announced today, and Trump's going to come out and say something tomorrow about it. So there's a lot of things that are making momentum, and, a lot of red tape's been peeled back. And in times of trouble, a lot of times, really innovative and creative people rise above. And hopefully we can all figure that out and create some workarounds and innovations and, keep the momentum going as far as creativity and ingenuity.
I think the good thing for those companies, like we talked about in the beginning, that the good leaders are showing up and they're stepping up and they're doing what they need to do to keep their companies afloat, or at least do their best to answer to their employees. Yeah. I think those guys are going to work out in the long run.
I think so too.
And I think that the people that are those leaders who are turning out to be cowards, and they're running around because they got theirs. Yeah. And everybody else is off. I think when everything does right side itself, that those guys are going to be worse.
Working for an ethical employer is always really important to me, but it also becomes less important when you're looking for a job and the salary's there and all these other things are there. Like, oh, are they ethical or not? Glassdoor ranked us at like 2 stars. So those sorts of things kind of like fall by the wayside when you're like, it's good salary and I like what I'm doing.
Well, I think it's a new calculus though.
Yeah. But I'm literally getting updates as I sit here right now. I'm feeling kind of antsy because I want to read what is being said. But yeah, it's like just the fact that I'm having to watch my phone by the hour to know if I'm going to have a job or not. Just pull the fucking Band-Aid. I mean, at this point, it'd be easier if you just laid us all off and we could collect unemployment. Like, that would literally be the better option than to drag us through the mud in the next, 2 weeks and not know what's going to happen. So,
well, let's pray that,
yeah,
whatever's going to happen is going to happen and that we're all going to come out good in the end.
I believe we're a strong species. We're a strong country, and not to propagate what's being said by Trump right now, but we've overcome a lot of shit. And I, in a way, think that this is a really good do-over button. I think our country was filled with a bunch of fucktards who don't know how to act and say dumb things, and we have cancel culture and all these other idiosyncrasies that have been happening over the last couple of decades that just make you shake your head and go, I can't believe this is my fucking country. I can't believe that these unpatriotic sons of bitches walking around in free speech land are walking on the same grass that I am, or whatever it might be.
I think it's going to take a lot more than this disease to fix a lot of that. But
maybe, but I think that this is a nice little wax on, wax off moment. Perhaps this is a complete do-over of how we act around people. I mean, look at the selfishness that's existing in grocery stores right now.
Yeah.
I hope to God we sit at home and do some self-reflections right now, because we have a lot of downtime. Yeah. The phone's not in front of our face. We're spending some time with our kids. We're spending time with our spouses. We're talking about shit that maybe we wouldn't have time to talk about before. We're doing shit that maybe we wouldn't have time to do before. And I can only hope that this will kind of resurrect some sort of humanity that we've needed to tap into for a while, and we just haven't had the downtime to do so and the disconnect to do so. So that's my hope. That's my hope for us as a family, my hope for us as a nation. And I just truly hope that this doesn't lead down a darker path and we can kind of come to grips with it in a very peaceful sort of way and move forward and rebuild and innovate.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing is these things lead, Elon Musk right now is figuring out what the fuck to do with this opportunity. He's not sitting around shuddering and quivering with the thought of his companies being shattered. He's innovating right now. And those types of people, we need 20,000 more of them to implement this rebirth that needs to happen. And it's a renaissance. And, that's a word that hasn't been tossed out in a very, very long time. But it is. It's a renaissance period. The idea of completely wiping us clean as a humanity as far as economy goes and as far as production and manufacturing.
It's not wiping us out as a species, but...
No, I don't think it will.
I don't think the virus is that serious, but again,
well,
I hope I don't look back at this podcast a year from now and say,
what a fool.
What a fucking ignorant fool.
I think you just have to look at other countries. And right now, China's numbers are spiking back up again. And there could be very, very well put by you earlier was, there's valid reasons. They stopped quarantining all of a sudden. Now everyone's thinking it's gone. And I think it's just how long do you quarantine? Yeah. How long do you shut down? And that's the question every country is asking. Yeah. How long does it take to quarantine the whole country? And to be really, really, really honest, we should have shut every single stitch of this country down, should have been shut down all at the same time, unanimously, for 2 solid weeks. Nobody can leave their house. Nobody can do anything for 2 solid weeks. And outside of that, then,
hindsight's 2020. I mean,
well, no, I was saying that 2 weeks ago.
Well, that again, hindsight's 2020, because if that would have been the case, and it would have been 2 weeks for that, and 2 weeks for that, and I just think,
well, as soon as we started getting a death toll and getting the tests out there, and started to see the like bell curve showed up, that's when we should have been like, okay, shut everything down, stay in your homes, hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I mean, it's hard to know.
Yeah,
hard to know because
hindsight is 2020. Yeah,
but anyways, I think that's a good spot to end it.
Yeah.
And,
well, thanks for chatting. I love you.
Thanks for the conversation tonight. I love you.
All right.
And everybody have a good night. Check us out on our Instagram, Lead and Lace Podcast. And we'll see you later.